Hello. Forgive my somewhat robotic voice. This is the best I can do. I'm not exactly human. You see, that's me, Ares. Or actually, I should say, that was me. I was the hero of a game titled Binary Erasure. I never quite understood that title, but I do now. My game was straightforward enough. My objective was to rescue my special love, Rue, who was captured and imprisoned by the Binary Empire. However, as I understand it now, the game could have also been played the other way around, in which case the hero would have been Rue, whose objective was to rescue me, Ares. In either scenario, the enemy was the Binary Empire. The Binary Empire was made up of an array of similar creatures, all of which were just different forms of Binaries. The only thing I liked about the Binaries is that they had nice bouncy heads. The objective of the Binaries was to keep my attention always on them, always fighting them, avoiding them. I didn't know it at the time, but as it turns out, I was essential to the seeming existence of the Binaries. But that's a subject I'll get to later. I don't want to get ahead of myself. Overall, the reason I'm here talking to you today is because I want to tell you my story, the story of how I beat the game. Beat my game. Binary Erasure. Even though from your perspective I'm just a video game character, don't dare dismiss the significance of my story. For, you see, you are a video game character too. Sure, the pixel size, frame rate, dimensionality, and rule set of your realm is much more complex and thus higher definition than mine. But that difference amounts to little more than a form of deception, because really, we are in the same game. Only the levels differ. For that reason, the story I'm about to tell you is the ultimate gameplay walkthrough. It is ultimate for the simple reason that what I'm about to tell you applies to all games, especially your own. For as long as I could remember, all I cared about was killing Binaries and rescuing my special love, Rue. I had a kind of ammunition at my disposal called projectiles, which effectively killed Binaries. I killed Binaries every chance I got. Not only was killing Binaries necessary to find the keys needed to complete each level, but killing Binaries was a foolproof means of avoiding being captured by the Binaries. Contact with Binaries always held the danger of being captured by the Binaries and becoming a Binary. Becoming a Binary meant fighting against myself for freedom. Weird, I know, but that's how the game was. Self-defeat meant escaping the Binaries and becoming myself again. Losing against myself meant death. It meant being killed by my own hand. I was good at my game though, and so I hadn't been captured by the Binaries for a long time. Occasionally, the Binaries managed to steal my hoverboard, or some of my stored energy, which I maintained by constantly gathering food. But that was about it. Being good at my game served to attract ever more Binaries to stalk me and try to capture me. And not all Binaries were the same. Some of the Binaries were of a more difficult breed, much more difficult to fight and destroy than run-of-the-mill Binaries. The difficult Binaries were bigger, more mobile, more unpredictable, and they had the same weapon as me, projectiles. The better I played my game, the more I found myself confronted by difficult Binaries. Eventually, the difficult Binaries became so annoying and prevalent that I just started to avoid them rather than fight them. The only good thing about the difficult Binaries was that they did have a few limitations. For one, they could only shoot in one direction. Also, the difficult Binaries couldn't follow me if they couldn't see me. So, in my evasion of the Binaries, I found myself spending more time high in the sky above the ground. In my time spent above the ground, I eventually discovered something odd. I hit my head on some kind of invisible platform. At first, I just dismissed it as some kind of glitch, a meaningless anomaly, and I carried on playing the game as usual. But more time spent above the ground avoiding bindings led me to hit my head again. And like the first time, whatever I hit my head on was invisible. It was too weird to ignore. It seemed like there was a platform that covered at least most of the level, but not all of it. That indicated to me that there must be some way of getting on top of the platform. Seeing as the platform was invisible, I figured it was something the Binids were trying to keep hidden. And if the Binids were trying to keep it hidden, wherever the entrance was, it was probably crawling with Binids. So I started looking for large clusters of Binids. After some trial and error, I finally found something. It took killing several Binids, but what I discovered was a kind of invisible staircase. I proceeded carefully, not knowing what to expect. Before I knew it, I was on top of the platform. I carefully proceeded across the platform until I came to a cluster of clouds. I went inside and was greeted by a character I'd never seen before. The character began to talk.
Hello, Mr. Aries. I am Unit the Undoer. I am pleased you finally found me. I have much to teach you. However, you've been programmed to find much of what I have to teach you incomprehensible. Therefore, you'll have to work to transcend the limitations of your programming. The game you have been playing up until now is a game designed by the Binids. That is not the only game within your game, though. There is another game within your game that was designed by me. What differentiates my game from the Binids game is merely the objective. The Binids seek simply to keep you playing their game. Their existence depends on you playing their game. I, on the other hand, seek to lead you out of the game and bring it to an end. That is all I can tell you for now. Due to the limitations of your programming, I can say no more. I have this for you, though. It is a tool to help you choose my game instead of the Binids game. This tool is the Light of Paths. The Light of Paths will guide you to where you need to go if you so choose to pursue my objective.
And that was it. Next thing I knew, I was at the start of the next level, armed with the Light of Paths. Just as I started the new level, I killed a Binid and found it contained a letter instead of a key. The message read, "The Light of Paths does not lead to root. It does not lead to your special love." The message scared me a bit. Perhaps I was being deceived. Perhaps Unid was some sinister force, a force perhaps even more sinister than the Binids. Ru is counting on me after all. Nonetheless, the Light of Paths seemed too promising to ignore, and so I began to use it. The light attracted extra attention from the Binids, but I nonetheless quite quickly found yet another invisible staircase. The staircase took me back to Unid.
Glad to see you back, Mr. Aries. By proving your willingness to use the Light of Paths, you've earned the Glass of Code. The Glass of Code will offer you your first glimpse of the true structure of the game. Understanding the structure of the game will help undo the limitations of your programming. You see, in the beginning, there was no code. All was one. All was on. But after the beginning, nothing was one. All was two. All was code. And opposite to one was born. Zero. Zero was off. One was on. With the birth of zero, the one, the all-on, was forgotten. The one, the all-on, became unfathomable. The fathomable became merely the computable. And the computable thus became reality. Reality became an incessant interplay of on and off, an incessant battle. between opposites. You do not want the off. You only want the on, the one. The one is the way of me, Unit. The glass of code will show you the interplay of on and off, 1 and 0. For instance, the glass of code shows this is the code behind me. The glass shows this is the code behind you. You want your code to eventually look like mine. The glass of code reveals that not all characters are the same. That is because the game does not exist without players. No players means no game. The game is mere probability until a player asks for it to be rendered. Processing proceeds like a wave but is rendered as pixels. Once rendered, a record must be made about how the game was rendered. That record allows the game to be rendered consistently. Without that record, the game falls back into mere probability. The game is consistent only to the degree that records exist to assure consistency. Records make the game approximately objective. Without records, the game is purely subjective.
I started the next level very confused. What Unit said made little sense to me. But then again, according to Unit, I was programmed to be unable to understand Unit. That's what I needed to overcome after all. The binids were keeping me dumb. Nonetheless, I did know one thing for sure. Each time I had found a path to Unit, it progressed me to the next level. So, I was still progressing toward root. And I was picking up new, interesting tools along the way, like the glass of code, which I used as soon as I had a chance. I discovered that most binids consisted of code arranged in a square made mostly of zeros. Their code was similar to the code of objects and scenery. However, some binids consisted of code similar to my own. The binids with code like my own were the ones that were harder to defeat. Despite the mystery of it all, my perception of the game was changing. Whereas before I had assumed the game was objective, that everything in the game had an existence independent of me, I was now beginning to understand that the game was ultimately subjective. There were some universal rules to the game, of course, universal enough anyway, but everything else was unique to my game experience. Fortunately, it wasn't long until I found my way to Unit again. I was eager for more insights, yet also skeptical. I actually felt like I was becoming wiser somehow. Maybe Unit was being truthful about helping me transcend my programming. Although I was beginning to feel like a different man, Ru was still my objective. My interest in Unit was still mostly just as a quick means to Ru.
Your binid programming is changing. You are becoming more Unit, but you still have much work to do. The next step in undoing the limits of your binid programming requires you to eat this, the fruit of time. This will unlock your deep memory, the memory beyond the minuscule memory of your current game. Once you eat the fruit, you will see a door. Go into it and keep on going until you find another identical door.
Although apprehensive, I did what Unit told me to do. Upon entering, I found myself at the end of the game rescuing Ru. I then found myself in a part of the game I hadn't remembered ever seeing before. Then after that, I was back at the beginning of the game, level 1. It was as if completing the game resolved nothing. I walked a bit further until I reached the edge of what seemed like an abyss. I had no option but to jump. As I fell, something very strange happened. I had an experience of being a human, like you. I was aware of myself as Ares and as someone else, the human controlling my character. The experience was brief, but through it I suddenly understood everything Unit had told me. I even understood more. I understood that my game was an online game with many players. The players had the choice of being me or Rube. The way the players interacted with each other was through being captured by the binads. The profundity of my experience of being human quickly faded though as my experience returned to the game and to the next level. As the next level started, I had very little interest in playing the game. I almost knew too much. What good was completing the game if completion simply meant restarting the game? Nonetheless, the fruit of time showed me something very liberating. It made me realize death is an illusion, a mere forgetting and not a real end. That helped the game feel a lot less real and made me much more relaxed. I felt rather safe as opposed to stressed. My game was not made of stuff, but of code. Overall, my interest turned solely to Unid. I still wanted to find Rube, but I now wanted to find her using Unid's way, not my own.
The game is a prison that you perpetuate by pursuing the binad objective. The binads do not exist without you. Conversely, you can and do exist without the binads. Only your existence as Ares depends on the binads. Your binad programming has long kept you believing that without the binads you would not exist. In other words, your programming makes you believe that leaving the game means oblivion. But oblivion is not real. Even in the game, oblivion is not real. There is no code of all zeros. Zeros can only be known relative to ones. A code of all zeros is nothing. You bring the ones, the ons, to the game, and mix them with offs, zeros. Without the game, you are all ones, or more accurately, 1-1. There is only 1-1. The idea of many ones is simply an artifact of comparing 1 to 0, to nothing. Code is the computable, but what you really are is uncomputable. Therefore, what you really are cannot be understood from within the game. What you really are cannot be modeled. One cannot be modeled and still be one. That is the primary deception of the game. True reality cannot be brought to nothingness and make anything more than illusion. The binads seek to keep the zero, the off, seemingly real. Your programmed objective of fighting the binads to rescue Rue is an attempt to separate ones from zeros, without actually getting rid of the zeros. Zeros can never be transformed to 1. 0 without 1 is nothing. 1 without 0 is all. 0 has made you forget what it means to be 1 without 0. Deep down in your programming is a belief that 1 without 0 was destroyed, and you are who destroyed it. You believe that by unleashing nothing, unleashing 0, you actually did something. You blame the binads for your sense of incompleteness, that you'd be whole if reunited with Rue. But that is not your problem. Your game is nothing more than a battle against yourself. Thus, to solve your problem is simply to cease to make it a problem. And to do that, you must rid your mind of zeros. 0 is fear. 1 is love. 0 is separation. 1 is wholeness. I could say more about this subject and get into the related subject of entropy, but I know you are unable to fully understand the ideas of which I speak while in your game state. Fortunately, that doesn't matter. Your understanding is only needed to the extent it incubates willingness. You must be willing to be done with the game. Only then will you use this, the wand of erasure. This is all you need to complete the game once and for all. The wand of erasure will erase your ones from the game and recombine them as 1-1 in the reality from which the games are computed. There is no need to erase nothing, 0, but there is a need to erase yourself from zero. All you have to do is actually use the wand whenever fear strikes.
In the next level, I decided to give the Wand of Erasure a try. I didn't quite know what to expect. One wave of the wand turned any Binate I waved it at into myself. Another wave rendered the Binate unable to harm me. The wand made the game quite easy. However, I eventually came upon a difficult Binate. One wave of the wand turned the Binate into an image of myself, but a second wave didn't seem to do anything. Neither did a third wave, and before I took evasive action, I was captured. I was now on the side of the Binates, and the only way out I knew of for sure was to replace myself by capturing myself. Thanks to my brief experience of being the human controlling my character, I now better understood this part of the game. These other me's were just me controlled by other humans. And that's also why some of the other me's were Rue. Some of the humans were playing the game as Rue instead of me. I was disappointed to find I didn't have access to the Wand of Erasure while in Binate form, or any of the other tools Unit gave me for that matter. So, since I couldn't rely on the Wand of Erasure to get me out of my predicament quickly, all I could do was fight my way out. But fighting myself was difficult. It was like I was paying for all the times I defeated other players captured by the Binates. Nonetheless, I eventually prevailed, escaped the Binates, and escaped death. That brought me to the final level of the game, the prison holding Rue. The prison was well guarded, and the Binates guarding the prison were better fighters than any I'd ever encountered. Fortunately, I didn't have to fight if I didn't want to. I had the Wand of Erasure. But rendering these Binates harmless took many waves of the wand, and I soon noticed that with each wave of the wand, I was beginning to fade. I started to worry that I'd completely disappear before reaching Rue, but I didn't disappear, because at a certain point I reached a limit and stopped fading. Thanks to persistence, I eventually obtained the keys and made it to Rue. I had completed the game, but not necessarily the game I wanted to complete. Oh no, I thought. I did something wrong. Now I'm just going to end up back at the beginning of the game again, with Rue imprisoned again and another long journey of fighting ahead of me. That was the Binate game. I'd already played that countless times. This time I wanted to complete Unit's game. In panic desperation, I grabbed the wand, which confirmed to me that I still had control of myself. I still had a chance, but all I could think of to do was use the wand on Rue. The game ended for good when I waved the Wand of Erasure at Rue. At that point, I had the experience of being a human again, like you, the human controlling my character. But it didn't stop there. I had the experience of being that which is computing the entire universe, computing the game of humans, of which I could see my game was merely a minuscule subset. Which brings us to now, right now. I'm about to step into the uncomputable. The uncomputable cannot be described. Anything short of actually being the uncomputable is computable and therefore is the illusory realm of zero, the virtual realm, your realm, my old realm. The step I'm about to take into the uncomputable is not a step I will make alone. It is a step I will take with everyone, including Unit and including you, for we are all ultimately one. Fortunately, where I stand, time is meaningless. Therefore, my wait for you and every other character is already over. My special love for Rue was nothing compared to what I feel on the precipice of the uncomputable. Just imagine if you loved everyone. You saw everyone was ultimately yourself, and that you saw the transgressions of everyone as mere fiction, as nothing. That is the fate of us all. Every second it is delayed is pure foolishness. Your game is just another level of binary erasure. And Unit the Undoer is waiting to guide you out of your level of the game too. So, be on the lookout for anomalous things. They may forge for you your own path to Unit. And until we meet again, which we will as one in the uncomputable, I leave you with this bit of wisdom. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. And therein rests the peace of reality, of oneness, of, dare I say, God.